All right. Mic check. 1, 2. Is this thing on? Is this thing working? It's been a little while. As a matter of fact, it's been about 819 days since we've last had the chance to catch up. How you doing? My name is Chris Falco. We got some news and notes to go over. Before we do any of that, though, we're going to have to right off the bat introduce the other voice you're going to hear on the podcast. Say hello, everybody, to Mr. Rob Mann. Hey, Rob.
Well, it's great to be on, Chris. It's nice to be part of the long-awaited, highly anticipated relaunch and to be back in business here. We had to shake some of the cobwebs off the microphones after 819 days, but we're ready to get going again.
You know what? Getting all this up and running. So right off the bat, we got to say welcome if you are one of the few who are on YouTube Live right now watching. We're going to continue like we used to do this pod live. That way, if you have questions, you have your comments, you can be a part of it with us, join us. Then, like any other traditional podcast, afterwards it'll be made available across all your your regular podcast. If it's Google, Spotify, Apple, however you listen, you'll be able to find us. But thank you for those who are joining us here live today as we do get things back up and running, and it has been a while. So as Rob said, shaking off the cobwebs is not just quite a line. In some cases, it was true. So we gotta make sure all the equipment works. This is kind of a bit of a soft launch of the relaunch, a bit of a test. But I appreciate you all joining us. It has been a little bit. So welcome back to the Weekly Harvest as we talk all things Brandon Wheat Kings. We talk things the WHL. Try and keep you up to date in all things junior hockey. Before we get into catching up on the league, let's catch up on ourselves. Rob, welcome to Brandon.
Yeah, it's been great to be getting settled in. I'm really enjoying Brandon so far, actually. I knew it kind of, I would say, secondhand growing up in Winnipeg. So I knew the city. I'd spent some time in the city. Hadn't really gotten the appreciation for it that I would say I have for the first month or so living here. Really beautiful city. I'm loving it here. This is great.
That's awesome. So for people who don't know, tell us where you're from and where you were before this.
So I've been on the mic now. I was just thinking this is going to be my 10th season if you go back to the U Sports days. But when I started getting into it in earnest, I was in Estevan, just about 3 hours west and slightly south of here for 4 seasons, including that COVID-shortened season in 2021, which was just, so much fun for everybody. That was just a joy to be part of. And then for the past 2 seasons, I've been on the wrong side of some Wheat Kings wins because I've been the voice of the Prince Albert Raiders up in PA. So I've lived in Sask for the last 6 years now. I'm back in the 204 or the 431, depending on when you got your phone. And it's really nice to be back in Manitoba because this is where I grew up and this is my home province. So it's nice to be closer to home. Nice to be back in Bomber fan country. I cannot tell you what it was like the last 6 years to be surrounded by Rider fans. And when I moved out there, the Bombers' Grey Cup drought was still in full effect. So I heard so many jokes about American teams winning the Grey Cup first. It was that 2019 Grey Cup win was a lifesaver.
Yeah, you know what? Just wait. There's still lots of Rider fans who happen to live around here. I know that for a fact too, because whenever we had our Blue Bomber night, which we love doing, right? We've had the Bombers here, have the Grey Cup here. Lot of Rider fans. We're pretty close to the border, as you know.
And a lot of people from Moosomin I know come into Brandon for games, and Moosomin, of course, home of the famous Red Barn, which is a popular stopping spot. In fact, I stopped there on the way in from Prince Albert while I was moving. Nice, healthy 7-hour drive with all my worldly possessions. Glad that's out of the way and we can get settled in.
Moving is always fun. Last year things were very chaotic around this time. We did not have our radio play-by-play voice yet. We didn't have our GM in Marty Murray yet. Things were still very much developing. This year, it's a lot nicer, the fact that we've had this time to kind of get settled with you, get you here, get everybody ready for this season. And we have a lot to talk about when it comes to Brandon Wheat Kings. We're going to have Marty Murray on in a little bit. We're going to be talking a lot about just a lot of excitement that's been based around this team growing for the last few years. Before we do that, we should take a quick scan around the league, I figure, Rob, because it has been a while. We kind of did our own news and notes of some other teams around the divisions. We are going to start by talking about some of our division opponents.
Yeah, and a lot of Wheat Kings fans I've noticed in my time here are really plugged in. They understand the league really well. They follow the league really closely. So for a lot of the Wheat Kings fans, what we're talking about here is going to be a reminder rather than new information. But there are a few things to keep in mind once we start diving into exhibition games and eventually, of course, regular season games, which are less than a month away now. We've been counting down the days fervently. Just up the road in Regina, obviously there have been some changes. Most of those so far have been on the off-ice side of things. Like, we anticipate that there will be on-ice changes. I mean, I think most of us reasonably expect Connor Bedard to begin the year and end the year with the Chicago Blackhawks. but officially he hasn't departed from the team yet. He hasn't made the Blackhawks. So most of their changes are speculative at this point. The off-ice side of things, Brad Haroff's the new head coach. Ken Schneider's got some Brandon connections, so I was wondering if he might be in consideration there. But seniority-wise, Brad Haroff made sense. He'd been with the Regina Pats for longer. Alan Miller's their new GM as John Paddock steps away from both roles, and we wish John the best in retirement there. As far as the on-ice side of things goes, Ewan Hue, and I hope I'm pronouncing Ewan correctly. He's Swiss, and he is the son of Cristobal Hue. And that's a name that NHL fans will remember pretty vividly. He was part of that long run of Montreal just rattling off good goaltenders. It went from Theodore to Hue to Halak to Price, and that run never really stopped. And his son, Ewan, is now a prospect of the Regina Pats. So you hear Hue and goaltender, you think, young man's probably pretty good.
You know what? There are a number of bloodlines that, continue, especially this year. There's a lot that we're going to get through as well as over in Alberta. Going to bring up this before we talk about anything happening in BC. We want to send all of our best wishes out to those who are affected by the incredible wildfire scenes that we've all been seeing playing out. Best wishes to everybody as that situation hopefully is getting better. I saw some great tweets of some big downpours happening, some rain, which is, I know, an absolute godsend for those people right now. But out in BC, there's a lot going on as well.
Yeah, a lot of movement, again, on the off-ice side of things. And on ice, too, there have been some trades for certain. Like Prince George would say that acquiring Orange Strome to join their crop of 2004-born players was a big get. Moose Jaw and Vancouver swung a trade that might have gotten buried in some of the shuffling around throughout the league, but it's going to be a big one, I think, a few years down the line. Merrick Howell goes from Moose Jaw to Vancouver. Now, Vancouver sends back a young forward, Ethan Semenuk, 2005-born forward. He's going to help Moose Jaw replace some of the depth that they're going to have to replace because they can't keep all their 2003-born players. They just don't have enough roster spaces for all of them. But Merrick Howell's a fascinating player in that exchange. 2006-born D-man, big guy, and the idea of he and Colton Roberts, another 2006-born D-man who's a big guy, both first-round picks in that 2021 draft, which is going to come up, by the way, when we bring Marty Murray in here. The idea of them patrolling the same blue line. There might be some nervous forwards out in BC right now at the thought of having to face those two 6'4" mobile guys. But off the ice, it's been Victoria lately that's been making the biggest noise. They looked at the Winnipeg Ice and said, hey, whatever their off-ice situation was, on ice they were a juggernaut, so let's get some of the guys in who helped build that juggernaut. So they've just today announced that James Patrick is joining the team. And from a radio guy's perspective, I love James Patrick.
James is a fantastic guy.
Yeah, one of my favorite interviews in the league. I love dealing with him. Jake Heisinger, another guy I always had really good conversations with. He's out in Victoria now as well in an assistant general manager role, and James Patrick is in the role of development or head of player development. So there's a lot of now Winnipeg DNA in that Victoria side, and that Winnipeg DNA comes from, again, whatever the off-ice problems were. On ice, Winnipeg won the last couple of years. It was almost all they did. So if you can take that philosophy and apply it, if you're Victoria, you've had a couple of lean years, this is going to be a really good addition to your staff.
One WHL market that is looking to make an announcement would be Lethbridge. Lethbridge is the only team in the WHL, as of right now, recording this podcast, without a head coach. Now, I did know that Greg Drinnan wrote that he heard that the leading candidate, it sounds like it's going to be Bill Peters, who people may remember from his stint with the Spokane Chiefs, but probably remember him better for his time as the head coach of the Calgary Flames. That would be interesting, but that's the one kind of head job that's still out there that nobody really knows, except for that one report that I read from Greg.
Yeah, and Manny Viveros has been officially taken off that particular market because I guess about a couple hours before we went live here, Manny ended up taking the job with the Vancouver Giants. So they were that other team that had yet to really make a decision on that front, and now it's just Lethbridge really left, and they've got, if Greg is on the money, and he's been pretty good at that sort of thing over the years, that would be their guy.
And we talked about bloodlines coming into this season. Swift Current, they have one. Now, this is a very, very, very cool story. I love when this happens. The Swift Current Broncos traded with the Portland Winterhawks for a 20-year-old local product, a D-man, Ryan Cleary. Always love when local kids get to go home. It's always a great story, especially for a 20-year-old year. But this is extra special. His dad, Trent, played for the Broncos back in 88 to 93 and then went on to play over 190 NHL games with the Sens, Bruins, and Canadiens. So pretty cool there. Going back to Portland was forwards Josh Davies and Tyson Yaremko. I know that people in the division will probably be happy, as we're talking about, to see Josh Davies head out to the U.S. division.
Not an easy guy to play against. Always reminded me watching him of Cal Clutterbuck. even kind of built the same way. I was talking to Craig Beauchemin about him my first season in the league, which was Davies' first full campaign because it was after the COVID shortened year. And we were talking about the guys on our respective teams who could really lay the body. And Davies was the first guy he brought up. Stocky kid, moving fast. Apparently he's built like a house. And he was running guys over all season long. So that rush of air you may have heard was a sigh of relief from the rest of the Eastern Conference that they no longer have to worry about Josh Davies. That said, Ryan McCleary is going to really bolster Swift Current, and I think that for Swift, with the number of 2004-born players they have coming into their 19-year-old year, this is a year for them. This is a go-for-it type season, and they've now reinforced that belief by bringing in two 20-year-olds this offseason. They brought in Tyson LaVenture from Lethbridge. He was a 20-goal guy last season, and now they've brought in a 30-point, sizable, reliable, local, as you said, defenseman that I think that he's going to provide a lot of stability on that back end. I can't guarantee how their 20-year-old situation is going to shake out, but it does look like they're in a position where they want the best possible players for the moment.
One of the big news coming out of Alberta here this offseason was the fact that Brent Sutter taking a step back from the bench in Red Deer. Obviously, with that kind of massive shift with the franchise, and they announced they brought on Derek Walser, a Q product who spent 19 pro seasons playing, and Red Deer kind of taking advantage of the first of the Winnipeg-Wenatchee trade-offs. This is something we're going to watch during the season for all WHL fans, is how the Wild treat their current prospect pool, because going forward, they do not have a whole lot in terms of draft picks. In the next few years, Wenatchee now is going to have a 5th and a 7th round next year, a conditional 3rd, but no guarantee until the 5th round in 2025, and 2026, no picks till the 7th round. So they got some draft picks they're going to have to move some bodies for, help replenish that. To start the year, though, they're going to have to be competitive on the ice. So it'll be very interesting to see how Wenatchee deals this season.
Yeah, and there's some logic to the idea that maybe you look and reevaluate things around Christmas. That's when World Junior season's going to run up, and frankly, I think there's a couple guys on that Wenatchee squad that are going to be in consideration. So you can do what the Raiders did with Caden Gooley my first season with the team, which is that when the World Juniors hits, you're not going to have this guy for a month anyway. So you might as well move him prior to that, get the new guys into the lineup, get them integrated. One of those new guys, by the way, was the player that Red Deer acquired from Wenatchee. It's Carson Latimer. You're gonna love him, Red Deer fans. He's fast. He's got a wicked shot, and off the ice, this is one of those guys. We were talking about Carson Bjarnason with this, about how if you're going out into the community, that's a guy you want to bring with you. That's Carson Latimer. He hits it off with the fans as well as any player I've ever seen.
And just one more name to throw out there for Wenatchee Wild that we King fans will be a little fun to hear. Rogers Bucharts, their import draft. And yes, that is a brother of Buki, Richards Bucharts, who played a couple of seasons here. He joins Kenta Osagi from Japan as Wenatchee's first 2 import players there. We got Marty Murray standing outside of the office studio, so we're going to get him in here in just right now as he walks on in. But for those who were watching on the pod, if you're watching live on YouTube, we have got a little bit going on right there. We've tried to step up a bit of production. So while Marty comes on in here, we are going to be talking and tell you about, for anybody who's interested in being a part of the Wheat King Game Day experience, we're going to be having a job fair coming up on Wednesday, September the 6th. Wednesday the 6th. 5:30 to 7:30 right here at the Brandon Wheat King office. You can come on down and we'll be taking some names and find out what kind of role you might be interested in. Speaking of the games, Junior Kings Club is back for 23-24. Your kids can come to the game for only $7.32 a game. It's unbelievable. So come and check that out. Also going on this year, this is just announced. We have got these brand new 17-game plans. So you can either do a half season or a split season. The half season is exactly what you think. It's the first half or the second half. Same price, just if you want to go first or second. And the split seasons, those go throughout the year, but they got a different mix of games. So you can have some of the big ones, get some random ones, have some fun with it. But definitely go in and check out all that. It's all on wheatkings.com. You can check out more details there. As we get back into the studio, like magic, now sitting at the desk, we got Mr. Marty Murray. Marty, how are you? Oh, let me turn your mic on. There we go.
There we go. Okay. No, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, fellas.
It is absolutely awesome to have you back on. So you are a returning guest of the podcast, but the last time that you were here, it was not in this current role. How things have changed, Marty, since then. It's been a wild year. Let's just kind of go back to that. It's been a year. What was that roller coaster like?
It was a roller coaster, to say the least. I think I arrived probably around August 28th, 29th, and right into the fire. So it was exciting to obviously get back to my roots here, but at the same time, my head was spinning, not knowing the players and the coaching staff, and it was kind of every day just a new learning experience. So a little more familiar with everything, this time around, but at the same time, it's great to be back and excited for the hockey season to get going.
You had to hit the ground running with both feet on that one because you have to take over major leadership roles within the club. But you mentioned the coaching staff there. I've been getting to know them a little bit through the last couple of weeks and getting a sense of the kind of group you have here in Brandon. How did they help you when you had to jump in feet first like that?
Well, they were all great. Don was here at the time, and Mark and Dell, Tyler Plant. They've been here a while, so our coaching staff was tremendous, and now working every day with Mark and Dell, we've become good friends, and we all have the same vision. And outside of the coaching staff, the scouting staff has been tremendous and led by Chris Moulton, and seeing old faces like Mark Johnson around the rink, brings back a lot of great memories. So, for me, it was a lot of chaos, but at the same time, I was surrounded with a lot of really good people that made the transition as easy as possible.
The season didn't get off to the start that we wanted. Coaching changes had to be made. You step behind the bench. What's that like for you, not only learning the franchise, but then getting to really learn your team from that standpoint? Not just behind the desk, but behind the bench.
Yeah, no question. I think that was the first time I've been in a role of just GM, so I want to make sure that I, didn't step on toes in the coach's office, and that's their job, right? So I stay back, and when you do that, you don't really get to know the players that well, right? You kind of talk to them briefly, but it's not the everyday basis that you used to. So, in that regard, it was nice to get to know the players as individuals away from hockey and get to know their personalities a little bit. That goes a long way in building the hockey team, and I was lucky to, inherit really good kids here. We have a good group of people, and getting behind the bench certainly got to know them better.
When you talk about that good group of people, and you mentioned them when you were kind of running down the list of the staff, you touched on the scouting staff there. And we were looking up and down the list of picks the team has made over the last few years. There's a lot of guys who are now coming into their own. But before we do kind of a deep dive, I want to talk about the most recent draft in particular. That's the first one you got to oversee for the franchise. What are your thoughts on that 2008-born class of players that the team is bringing into the fold?
Well, we're real excited about the 08 to 07, 06 group. I think there was a lot of really high-end prospects there, obviously. We drafted Jackson Jacobson in the first round, 5th overall, and obviously there's a connection with the Wheat Kings. We all know that, but at the same time, he's a special player. It didn't matter what his last name was. He would have been a player we coveted. He's a style of player that I like and want to, build our team around those type of players with hockey sense and hockey IQ and competitiveness. So that was a no-brainer. And then, we wanted to get a D, in the first round as well. We had our second first-round pick, and we were able to get Georgios Pantelis, and I think he's going to be a real good player. And then, the list goes on and on. Nigel Baim and Isaac Davies, and we feel like we have a good crop of 08s. We signed 4 of them, and I think there's more in the hopper there that are going to be real good players down the road.
Anybody who had any doubt about Jacobson, all they had to do was just go and watch what he was doing as a 14-year-old in the U18 league. There's a lot of talent in that draft class. Seeing him so George, Gio. There's going to be a whole bunch of names for Pantelis, and I know that
I think is going to come up. Yeah,
he's going to have a whole bunch of nicknames. But him and Jackson, that was the first time that they met, and that was super cool. They were bonding. To really see all these guys, not that you were drafting, but as good hockey players, but good people. When we got to see them at Prospect Camp, Marty, there was an instant bond, not between just those two, but a lot of these young kids.
Yeah, and that's the one thing, it seems like this group is really proud to be Brandon Wheat Kings, and that's one of the things you look for. You're obviously drawn to the best players out there, but it's nice when you get a combination of really good hockey players as well as people that are passionate to be Brandon Wheat Kings, and we feel like we have that with this group here with our 08 draft.
So let's talk about our rookie class here, because we have got some big names who are going to be trying to make their names as rookie here. It starts off with Joby Baumüller. Joby came on in last year, made a case for himself almost as rookie of the year, even only playing a few games at the end of last season, because he looked like he was not out of place at all.
No, we're really excited about him. I think he has a potential to not only feel his way into the Western Hockey League, I think he has the ability to kind of explode into it. And we certainly don't want to put pressure on him. He's 16. It's a hard league to play in as a 16-year-old, but we feel as though he has that ability to do special things, and his shot release is as good as anybody. And I think it was important for him to get his feet wet down the down the road or at the end of last season. I think that'll be very valuable experience for him going into this year. And you kind of think back at some of the games towards the end of the season. Even last weekend we had a home and home against Winnipeg. They played all their big horses, and I thought in particular he was one of the guys that really stood out and really elevated his game for those last two games.
And it's nice when you get to audition a player like that in a live setting. You got a player who gets to play his first Western Hockey League games, but the Wheat Kings did something similar with Roger McQueen and Charlie Ellick the prior season. Is there a giant difference in your experience between a guy coming in for a handful of games at 15 and then being a full-time Western Hockey Leaguer?
Well, I think it helps with the transition, right? I think at whether you're coming at 15 or 16, it's a whole different animal coming into the Western Hockey League. So the earlier you can get that experience, the better. And obviously, we want to make sure the player's ready. We don't want to throw them into something that they're not ready for. But a player like Joby, even though he's not a towering guy as far as height, he's a real strong, thick kid, and he didn't look out of place at all.
And there's got to be obviously this how should I put this? There's this way that you're trying to do your best to work all these kids in throughout the season while still putting an emphasis on winning, right? That you don't want to throw the kid in just to get experience. You want to put the best team on the ice possible. But it is crucial to sometimes get them a little bit of experience and get that taste. Last year you did that with a number, of these guys, giving them a game or two. What was your thought process with that? How do you balance those two things?
Well, it is tough. I think that, depending on who you're playing, what the circumstances of the game are, you go in with a game plan as far as, how much opportunity you want to give these kids, and which is important. At the same time, there's a lot of things that can change, at the drop of a hat within a game, right? So that changes, but at the same time, even just to be around the game day preparation, the video, just to get an idea of what it's all about. I think, on these guys' respective teams are at the midget level or what have you, U18 level. They go to school, they probably come home and slam something to eat, and then they're at the rink. So, it's just a whole different, it's that bridge between, youth hockey and pro, and it gives them an opportunity to kind of see what a glimpse into the future is like.
So, talking about that rookie class, Joby Baumüller, Easton Odut, Emerson Clark, Grady Hope, Brady Turco, a lot of guys who are, be pushing and trying to make their way in. Then you look at the 1 year older, the 17-year-olds now, and you're talking about guys like Ellick, McQueen, Hadland. We're going to get into Klippenstein and Esket, but guys like Ellick, McQueen, especially with this past summer getting invited to Team Canada, what does that do for them?
I think it's going to be a huge confidence booster for them. I touched on the league's hard at 18, I think, or 16. Sorry. There's lots of ups and downs, and those two players, we felt, made some nice strides throughout the year, but I think just to experience that game with Team Canada at the Hlinka, not only playing for the team but playing a pretty significant role, I think will really help with the confidence builders heading into the fall.
Glad you brought up the confidence there, because Roger McQueen ends up being one of his team's leading scorers. And as a forward, I think the expectation is that you're going to score. In his rookie season, he put the puck in the net a few times, but I'm sure he wanted more. He wants more coming back this year. How much good is that going to do him? Because you were a goal scorer yourself. You know what the confidence factor's like.
Yeah, it's all about confidence. I mean, I remember my first year as a 16-year-old had 4 goals at Christmas, and sometimes you go home at night and you're kind of wondering if you're in the right place and if this is where I'm supposed to be. And confidence is such a big thing. And if you can get some confidence, it goes a long, long way. And we saw that with Roger this summer. I thought he was, one of the top players in his age group at the Hlinka. And you talk about Joby, the way he shoots a puck, Rogers on that level too, where he can snap it. And, it gives him another opportunity this summer to put on some strength, and he's a different build. Like a player like Baumüller is kind of short and stocky, where he's more compact, where Rogers still kind of growing to his body a little bit too. So you got to take all that stuff into consideration. But I think at the end of the day, he's going to be a real good player, not only for the Brandon Wheat Kings, but beyond that as well.
Caleb Hadland had his season really cut short last year, was fighting through injury. One of the greatest kids. He's very intelligent, like a born leader was all we heard about him before he even got here, and you can see that leadership already in his like he's mature beyond his age. What do you expect, and what have you heard from him this summer and his development?
Well, you don't have to worry about Had's putting in the work. He's a workhorse. He's going to do whatever it takes to be at his best when the season starts. And real tough, obviously, start to the season, going to a Hockey Canada stuff, and he broke his leg and missed a good portion of the season. But he put in the work and was ready to come back. And again, we're talking about February, March when he's 16 years old, where everybody's in top performance level, and he's still trying to find his rhythm as a 16-year-old. I thought he did a tremendous job of coming out of the injury the way he did, and much like I talked about Joby, I was really encouraged with his play down the stretch. I thought he played some real good hockey for us.
Now, I got to witness Ethan Eskett dip his toe in the Western Hockey League waters. In fact, I got to call his first ever start and his first ever win because he came away victorious in that game in Prince Albert.
Yay!
Yeah, that was... Well, I mean, the guy lets in 3 goals on 33 shots, and one of those goals is a 20-year-old on a penalty shot. What's the path forward like for a guy like that?
Well, that was a crucial game for us. I remember, we were in a playoff push there, and that was a kind of a must-win game for us. And he came in and did a tremendous job. And I think even in the game before, he kind of stepped in and played some minutes there at the end, and did a really nice job. And like you said, Prince Albert isn't an easy barn to go in and play for your first Western Hockey League start. And
it's not easy on your 100th start,
exactly,
from what I've heard.
Exactly, no question. And like you said, first goal against was a penalty shot, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was like 4-1 with 2 minutes left, and they got 2 at the end. For me personally, sitting on the bench, I was thrilled that we come out with a win, but it would have been nice to keep him at 1. But I thought he looked like a seasoned veteran out there, the game he played, and he's a competitor. Been real impressed with the way he carries himself. He's got a little swagger to him, which I think is a good thing for a goaltender, and he really competes hard, and he's very technically sound.
No, I wasn't here for the team's prospect camp, but the one name I kept hearing about coming out of that camp and how impressed a lot of the staff around the office was Carter Klippenstein. Good sized kid, moves well, got some leadership. What do you foresee for him?
Yeah, you think about the prospect camp, he's kind of a bit of a man amongst boys, right? And he's a big body that skates well. He's just kind of a modern day power forward. And, we talk about wanting to have a little bit more hard skill around here. I think Carter exemplifies what that is. He's a guy that can make plays. He can get in hard on the forecheck and separate people from the pucks. He can, he can bury pucks when it's on a stick too. So we're real excited for him. And again, as a 17-year-old, we felt like for him to develop, to go play U18, and he did that. He established himself as a leader of the captain of his team at the edge. Again, much like some of our other guys coming in as first-year guys, I vision him having an impact right away.
I was one of those guys who was very impressed at prospect camp of him. I thought that he was incredible. We're going to have a couple of amazing battles coming up at camp in a few of these spots, including with the goaltending. We talked about Eskett. We got to give a shout out as well because we called up Green last year for a game, who also looked fantastic.
Yeah, Green was he had a really solid prospect camp, and it's a fun time to watch these kids develop because now they're growing. They go from 5'10" to 6'1" all of a sudden, and Carson Bjarnason is a tremendous example of that. He goes from 5'9" to 6'2" almost overnight, and you're like, oh boy. And then you can have an idea who these players are going to be and what they're going to be for you. So it's fun to, Ryder's one of those guys that fits that criteria. And, like there's Tal Flory was another one that I thought had a really good prospects camp and how much he developed over the course of the season. So it's awesome to see these kids grow. And now going into training camp in the fall, it'll be a real neat experience to see him match up against our veteran guys.
Or you can do what Roger McQueen apparently did and go from 6'4" to 6'6".
Yeah, that's he's at some point you might think he's a basketball player, but he's a big guy with a long reach, and again, he's got a special ability to put the puck in the net, and I would have killed for some of that height.
It was a very special summer for some Wee Kings as they got to hear their names called at the NHL draft. A couple that were of no surprise, and one that was just a put a big smile on my face. It was a big heartwarming story. Let's start, though, with Nate Danielson having his name called with Steve Yzerman. How special that must be for him. We got to get him on the pod and talk to him about that. But 9th overall to Detroit, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, just even I can't imagine what he was going through, but sitting up in the stands there live, it was an incredible experience. When it gets to 7 beyond, you're okay. What are we going to hear Nate's name, and then to go in the top 10? Well, that's a big deal, and to go to a storied franchise like Detroit, I think it's a great spot for Nate, and I'm not surprised. We as Wheat King fans see what he's all about, his makeup, and we're real lucky to have him around for another year. I think he's going to be a top player in the league, and he's just a great person. Hockey aside, his family's they're just unbelievable people. So he's one of those guys where good things happen to good people, and I think we're going to watch Nate a long time on TV after he leaves the Brandon Wheat Kings.
And then the Westman connections between the Wheat Kings and the Philadelphia Flyers continue because Carson Bjarnason, of course, goes there in the second round. And we talked about the confidence required to be a goal scorer. For a goaltender to get that confidence going in the second round, what's that going to do for him?
Well, I think it's going to be huge. And I haven't seen him live yet, but by all accounts, I know talking to Tyler Plant, he said he looks amazing. He's balanced of the line of really working hard but not overly doing it, and he's in great shape. And Planter said he looks unbelievable on the ice. So, he was our number one goalie last year, which is a little bit unusual for a 17-year-old at this level, and I thought he handled it very well. Now he's another year older, and much like Nate too, I think a lot of noise with the draft throughout the year, and I got to see it just with all the interview requests by NHL teams, and that's a lot on a 17, 18-year-old kid too. So now that's kind of out of the way. Both of those guys can kind of focus on hockey, and I think we as Brandon Wheat Kings will see dividends.
So Brett Hyland, who goes undrafted through a couple of drafts, gets his name called by the Washington Capitals after being injured at the end of the year. But Brett did so much this season before he got injured, and really kind of
he's sitting up in the 7th round when hearing his name called. I don't know if there's a more deserving player to get drafted. He works and he works and he works, and nothing has come easy for him. And he was having an exceptional season for us last year, and probably one of the main reasons we fell off at the end. It's hard to replace a player like Brett Hyland, and unfortunately he had that injury, required surgery, and he went through a lot, and it's great to see him recognized for all the hard work he puts in every day, and the value he can bring to an organization. So we were real thrilled to see Brett get picked up in the draft by Washington as well, and he's a guy too that I think has a chance with his work ethic and his ability to play up and down the lineup.
Well, that was just like a big boost just for me to know that the injury couldn't be so bad it would scare off an NHL team. Right? Like he got drafted and he couldn't even.
I think he's Brett's another one that you never have to worry about him missing workouts and stuff. He's chomping at the bit to do whatever. It's more probably keep him off the ice and not do too much and set yourself back. So all three of these guys we're talking about from a coach's standpoint are zero maintenance. And we're lucky that they're leaders on our hockey club.
And we knew that Brett Hyland was at least somewhat on NHL radars because he'd been at camp with the LA Kings. And that's going to be Quinn Manti now. He's been at camp with the Calgary Flames. What do you want him to take away from that experience? And further to that, what do you want him to do for the Wheat Kings this season?
Yeah, Quinn was a guy that I was personally surprised we didn't hear his name called at the draft. I thought, especially in the second half, I don't know what it was after Christmas, a light went off, and I thought he was exceptional in the second half, and drew the assignment of playing against the other team's top line every night, and I thought he was excellent, and he finished in double digits plus minus, and logged a lot of minutes for us, and kind of a modern day defenseman. He's not a big bone crushing guy, but he just does everything so well, and his skating allows him to get kill plays or get himself out of trouble. Big expectations for Quinn this year. We think he's going to be an anchor on the back end as an 18-year-old, and again, another kid that an exceptional young man that you see good things for in the future.
Not a big guy, as you said, but I did see some bone crushing from him over the last couple of years. He's got an edge. I think there's going to be some NHL teams kicking themselves they passed on this guy.
For sure. Like I said, I was really surprised that he didn't hear his name called, but things happen, and I know he's motivated to start the year, and he's going back to Calgary camp. So to me, that was a real good sign right after development camp with Calgary. They invite him right back to main camp too. So they obviously have some love for him, and it's nice to again see a kid like that get rewarded.
So at the time of the recording of this podcast, we are 1 week out from players reporting heights, weights, and then training camp gets underway. So the rest of your hockey staff should be getting here next week. How well are you sleeping right now?
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and you're trying to do those final touches, and then you can just focus on hockey. I think for us in the management and coaching staff, it's there's a lot of stuff from the end of the season till now, and then the exciting part why we're all here is to kick off the hockey season, right? So it's right around the corner. A lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm for the upcoming season, and some guys are going to start trickling here into Brandon here the next day or two. So it'll be fun to have them around. I think they have some ice that they're going to skate. So it's close, and you can kind of taste it. You almost feel like it's you're a kid on Christmas morning, but it'll be here, and really looking forward to getting the season going.
Well, home opener, 7 p.m., Friday, September 22nd. Regina Pats are going to be in town. First time in a while it wasn't Winnipeg Ice as well. How nice is that not to face them 10 times this year?
Well, they were pretty good. They're a pretty good hockey team, and you know what? As good as they were, I think we played them hard, other than a couple games, and it was frustrating from our standpoint because I think we had them on the ropes in more games than people probably recognize. Probably four of the games we were up by a goal inside 10 minutes, and we just couldn't close it out. So that's part of the process. They were a veteran team that had a lot of confidence, and they felt confident coming back late in the game where we're a younger group trying to figure out how to play with the lead and stuff like that. So these are learning experiences, but I won't miss that particular roster with the ice. They're pretty special, and at the same time, with the Manitoba rivalry, it was hard to see them leave Winnipeg too.
The downside of their relocation, of course, is give it a year or two, they're going to start going through a bit of a rough patch. The shoe would have been on the other foot. How nice would it have been to go in there and win 10 times?
Yeah, I think that's been talked about among the staff here in our group. But that it is what it is. What do you do? And that's something out of our control. But it would have been nice to pay back maybe a few of those defeats we took last year.
We've talked a bit about some of the known commodities, guys that are coming back, guys that the fans are familiar with. But before we let you go, I do want to talk about one, probably not for you so much, but for the fans, unknown commodity, and that's Dominic Peter. This is a guy that I think there's some excitement about around the office, maybe some expectations that he can step in and contribute right away.
Yeah, I think so. He suffered some injuries last year, and I think a year ago, just even researching on the internet, there's a lot of buzz about him even being a first, second round NHL pick, and he ended up having some injury trouble last year, and he just kind of fell off there as far as the NHL ranks. And I know he's coming over very motivated. I think he's you talk about building a culture. He's been wearing letters on the national team, things like that. He was underage with the U18 and then played again for his second year. So there's a lot of things to like. In saying that too, it's a big adjustment for a European player to come over and not only play in a different style of hockey, but also a new culture. I lived it as a player on the other side going over to Europe, and it is a big transition, and especially when you're 18 years old. So I think we don't want to put too much pressure on him, but we think he can come in and really contribute to our hockey club throughout the season.
I don't want to put any additional pressure on the young man, but I do want to throw something at Wheat Kings fans really quickly for them to keep in mind. You mentioned that as an underager, he played at the U18 and the Hlinka Gretzky. And a couple of his teammates in those events, guys a year older than him, are in the Western League now. František Formanek in Red Deer and Andre Becker out in Prince George, both of whom were pretty regular roster players last season, regular offensive contributors. Despite being a year younger than them, he outscored both of them in those events. He's got some touch.
Yeah, no question. He's kind of a rangy guy. He's about 6'2", 175, 180, I think. So I think he's just an all-around 200-foot player, and it'll be fun to see him arrive in Brandon. He actually lands tomorrow, so it'll be good to have him in town and get acclimated and get used to the time change and things like that, and then hit the ground running next week.
Well, here we go. We are 1 week from basically training camp beginning and it all starting up, and now you have a full year under your belt. So you must feel a whole lot more excited this year than nervous, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, Marty. We're going to touch base with you again probably just after preseason before home opener, if that's cool.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
All right. We're going to get Marty back on the podcast. Awesome. Cool. Me and Rob are going to be doing a bit of a wrap-up here before we get out of here. But before we do that, just a reminder that not only do we have our home opener happening, but at the home opener, the big grand prize draw of the Progressive 50-50. This current pot, as of the beginning of this podcast, it was at $15,710. So if you are watching this pod on YouTube, there's a QR code on the screen right now. You can scan that to purchase. If you're listening, go to wheatkings.com. You'll see it right there. There's a big Progressive 50-50 button as well. But get in on that. The last time we did the Progressive 50-50, was the one that went up to, I think, Rob, the winner took home. It was like $117,000, $120 something. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely crazy. It was awesome. We would love to see that happen again. Let's get a nice big winner at the night of the home opener. If you are looking to get to the home opener and you're not quite too sure about how the best way to do that is yet, well, you can go and you can take advantage of our Flex Packs. The Flex Packs are back for this season. 34 exchangeable tickets. You can get this in either a digital form or a paper hard ticket form. So if you like the old Flex Packs of handing it out to your clients, to the people you work with, to friends, you can do that, or you can get the digital one, which literally you log in, you pick the game you want, and you send the seats. Super simple, but making it easier and easier for you to come to a Wheat King game, and especially with those new 17-game plans, the half season and the split season. So hopefully we're going to see everybody out here as we get closer to it. We've also got a couple of preseason games coming up, Rob, that we're going to all kind of get our feet wet. We use that internally for testing, but that's going to be nice to get everything on, and then it really feels real.
I know some people kind of roll their eyes at the length of the preseason. Like you hear the occasional grumble about, there's this many games, and it's just an exhibition game. And yeah, I love the preseason. I love getting to see those young players get their first taste of Western Hockey League action, especially when you get, there's 4 2008-born players who are signed. Those guys aren't going to be able to play full-time this season because of the league's rules, but they're going to get into some exhibition games. They're going to get their first crack at WHL opponents. It was funny last season. I know with the Raiders, it was a 2007-born goaltender going up against Connor Bedard in one of the games against Regina, and that's the kind of matchup that young man will probably remember for the rest of his life, and we'll see a few of those in the preseason as well. It's also an opportunity for fans to get a look at that exciting crop of prospects, the rookies we talked about, the Baumulers, the Klippensteins, the Eskets, etc., the guys who are coming in and who are both this year and beyond going to be huge contributors for the Wheat Kings.
Absolutely. Before we get out of here too, I thought that it'd just be fun for us to go through for those that haven't heard the term. Most have. There was the Bedard factor last year, which is, of course, when every arena he went to, it sold out. People wanted to see him. I'm really hopeful that this year there is some carryover of that factor just throughout all the NHL prospects, though. This was another fantastic NHL draft for the WHL. The Dub, once again, led the way. The most draft picks into the NHL, and I made this list here. It's very interesting about how many players from each team were drafted. Your Wheat Kings were only behind the champion Seattle Thunderbirds on this list. The T-Birds had 6 players who were drafted. The Wheat Kings had 3. Your next set after that, you had Vancouver, Saskatoon, Kelowna, PG, Portland, Everett, Vic, and Kamloops all had 2 players selected. Winnipeg, Moose Jaw, Red Deer, Tri-City, PA, Edmonton, Lethbridge, and Regina all had 1, and only 4 teams did not have a pick last year, and that would be Spokane, Calgary, Medhat, and Swift Current. But a very impressive list with a lot of players who were selected, and a lot of reason not just for you to be excited to come watch the Wheat Kings play, but literally almost every single other opponent coming in is going to have a draft pick from this past year, if not from the years previous.
And the teams you just listed off there who didn't have a guy picked, That streak is ending at 1 for all of them. I am sure that much. I mean, let's start right off the top. Spokane, Berkeley Cadden, like that's going to be a top 5 pick this year.
Can we talk about Med Hat and Gavin McKenna?
Yeah, a couple years from now, probably the first overall
He's
pick.
probably the first overall pick in a couple years in the NHL draft.
I give him Caden Lindstrom some love there too. I thought he was great at the Linka Gretzky, and it never hurts when you're 6'5", 200 pounds, and just a little mean.
There you go. Swift in Calgary as well. It was crazy to think about. But again, if you were on the fence about coming to Wheat King games, coming to Dub games, about what opponents. There is talent throughout every single team in this league, and it's going to be a very, very fun season. And Rob, I am very excited for this now.
I'm pumped for this too. This is going to be great.
The pod is back. We are a week away from the players. And for those who are watching, how awesome is this? Welcome to the Wheat King studio. So this studio, you've seen it. We've used it in other videos over the last couple of years. The idea initially was to use it more for stuff like this, a multi-camera setup in the studio. This is only week 1. It's going to get better. The camera angles will get better. All the lighting, we're going to figure out some cool little stuff. But as for now, I think we haven't had any negative things coming across saying hi. Yeah. Oh, hey, hi on the comments saying that nothing is working. So hopefully everything worked well here for this week number 1 test. As we get going forward, this is going to be kind of like a free form podcast. So some will be 45 minutes, some might be a little over an hour. There's no time restrictions here. We can talk for as long as we want, Rob. But
as long as we got good things to talk about, and we will have those.
That's exactly it. So we're going to try and get back to doing this every single week as we used to. Coming up next week, we know that we're going to have an interview with a Carson Bjarnason, who is in town right now. There's actually a few players in town. I love this. So Barney's obviously in town because he's helping with the goalie school. He's going to be here anyway for us. But the other players who former Wheat Kings who are back in town to either just train, they still like to come here and use the guys to train, which says a lot about the world-class facilities and people that we have working under the umbrella. But guys who come back and also just work some of our schools. So Yuri Patera, he's in town working our goalie camp right now. Ridley Gregg is in town, and he's not helping out any school. He's just here working out, just getting ready for the season. So there's those guys kind of around. So as we see them, we're going to do our best to try and twist some rubber arms and get them on. But for sure, we know Barney's going to be on the podcast next week. That should be very cool to talk to.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be great to pick his brain a little bit about, becoming the team's starting goaltender at a relatively young age, as Marty alluded to, joining the Philadelphia Flyers. He's going to get to learn from a guy like Carter Hart, somebody I know he spoke to the Western Hockey League about today, and he's got an exciting path ahead of him. One thing I keep coming back to with him, a late goaltender, and I don't mean that in terms of his birth year. I mean, he wasn't a goaltender when he was a kid. It took him to be 13, 14 years old before he switched away from D to goaltender, so his development curve at this point is vertical.
There are some amazing stories about that I love every now and then. When we get to go in the community, we talked earlier about, there's... If I had to pick a handful of players over my now 10 seasons with the team who I knew that I could just go in the community with, it was going to be awesome every time, Carson Bjarnason is definitely one of them. There's just something about him. He's a fantastic kid. But when you look at the development of the goalies coming in at that age, he had no bad habits. He was just, wanted to learn the position, and he did it. But we always like to ask the question when we go in. Ask the kids, when did they like to play hockey, or do they play hockey? When did they start playing hockey? And a lot of them are 8, 9, 10 years old, and their friends are already playing for 4 or 5 years. They think it's too late. It's like, no. Listen, here's a perfect example. Here's Carson. He didn't start playing goalie until he was older than you. A few years ago, we had a local product, Duncan Campbell. He was on that championship team, Brandon kid, very, very smart. He actually went to Queen's University. I believe he's just graduating, if not this year, right around now, but took full advantage of that education and the scholarship foundation, which is fantastic. But Duncan didn't start playing organized hockey until he was 12, 13 years old. So guys like that who, get the late start and can still show that with the right work ethic, with the right determination, you can still make it. And even like Barney, unsigned, right? Came into camp, worked his tail off. All of a sudden, who is this Bjarnason kid from Carberry? And the next thing you know, he's the backup of the Wheat Kings, and now look. So we're going to have him on the podcast next week. Have you talked to him much yet, Rob?
A little bit, yeah. I got to meet him. Actually, he would have been the first player I met because he was in town helping out a little bit at the goalie school. Tremendous speaker. As a radio guy, as the play-by-play guy, I love these guys. So you can ask them a question, and they'll just go. He's a naturally charismatic kid, and I don't know if that has anything to do with him being a goaltender. I've actually known a lot of goalies who are really good speakers for whatever reason. I'm sure it requires a ton of mental sharpness to play goal, so that doesn't hurt. But that stereotype of the goaltender being weird, okay, they're weird. Yeah, they are. You have to be. You're throwing yourself in front of a puck moving at 90 miles an hour. You have to be a little bit.
Yeah.
But they also tend to be pretty well-spoken.
They sure do. They sure do. Especially when it comes to him. So that's going to do it for the podcast, I believe, this week. As Del walks by, Del Pedrick. We got to get him on the podcast one week here. All these guys. Now that we're back up and running, I can't believe it's been 2 years, 2 months, and 28 days.
But who's counting?
But who's counting? Very glad to be back. Thank you all for tuning on in here to episode 58 of the weekly podcast. And I guess we're going to see you next week. What's going to be our extra here, Rob? Is it going to be the same song? Is that what I should do?
That's the way the news goes. No, we'll do the song. Spare you my impressions.
All right, we're going to do the song, if the song does play. There it goes. We'll have to get some lyrics for this song going forward as well. A theme song.
I've always wanted a theme song.
All right. I'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks for listening to The Weekly Harvest.